Former Notre Dame law professor Amy Coney Barrett is just the second Supreme Court justice from Indiana. But what do you know about the first? Mitch Legan has more on Sherman Minton, the original Hoosier justice.
A Supreme Court justice from 1949 to 1956, Sherman Minton hailed from Floyd County and until recently was the only person chosen from the Hoosier state on the nation's highest court. But for many Hoosiers traveling south, a bridge bearing his name is how you get to Kentucky.
I mean, I used to ask my students the same thing, do you know who the bridge is named for? Some guy named Minton. I don't know, who was he?
Guggen and her husband Jim St. Clair both taught at IU Southeast for decades. Much like Floyd County historian Dave Barksdale, they took an interest in Minton, who was born to a poor family in Georgetown in 1890.
Got his early schooling in Georgetown. And then came into New Albany High School.
Growing up in poverty had a profound impact on Minton, who worked hard from a young age to support both his family and his goal of continuing his education. In 1911, Minton had enough money to enroll at IU Bloomington.
They would go pick berries, to have something to eat. I mean, it really was a poverty existence that they experienced as undergraduates.
Still, he was a stellar student-athlete there, playing baseball and football and graduating from the law school with a full ride to continue studying at Yale.
One of the significant things that happened to him at Indiana University, and that is that he became very close friends with Paul McNutt, who would later be governor and would really launch Minton's political career.
Behind me here in New Albany is the Ellsby Building, which is where Sherman Minton opened his first law practice after returning from World War I. It was in this building Minton would start a legal career that would take him to the United States Senate and eventually the Supreme Court. After reopening the practice in New Albany, Governor McNutt chose Minton to head the state's Utility Regulation Commission. Minton used his success there to catapult to a new position in 1935, Democratic senator from Indiana.
And as it turns out, Minton was seated next to Harry Truman, and that was the beginning of, a long friendship.
During his single term in the Senate, Minton became President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's right-hand man in Congress and stumped hard for the president's New Deal programs as a response to the Great Depression.
And I think that's one of the things that he tried to do in his political career is help people who were in similar situations that he experienced.
But the Supreme Court would rule many of the initiatives unconstitutional, which influenced Minton's view of the court and made him the #1 senator pushing the president's court packing plan.
He said, we're not trying to pack the court, it's those 9 old men that are packing the court. They won't get off the court. And of course that was part of Roosevelt's plan, was to get rid of any justice who was over a certain age, and that would give him more. And of course that issue has come up again.
The court packing plan proved unpopular, and Minton lost his bid for re-election in 1940. For his efforts on the New Deal, President Roosevelt appointed Minton to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. About 8 years later, a vacancy opened on the Supreme Court. And sure enough, Minton's old buddy, now President Harry Truman, was in position to fill the seat.
That was the one thing that came up for him, was his partisanship. In the same way, I think for Barrett, the one thing that's come up for her is her conservatism.
Minton's 7 years on the court were quite conservative compared to his time in the Senate because of his belief in judicial restraint. He did, however, break with his ideology as a key vote in overturning segregation in schools in Brown versus Board of Education.
Judicial restraint, it was the way he saw the role of the court, because he had lived through that New Deal experience in the Senate, striking down legislation using the Constitution. And so he came onto the court not a fan of that approach.
Kate says Justice Barrett is similar in her belief in judicial restraint and relying on settled precedent, although her originalist outlook and young age put her in the position to have a major impact on the court in the years to come.
The most immediate thing is that John Roberts no longer really controls the majority on the court in the way that he did.
Barrett's instant impact is giving the court a 6-seat conservative majority. Whether Hoosiers will name a bridge after her remains to be seen. But down in New Albany, Barrett gives educators an opportunity to discuss Floyd County's favorite son.
We want the next generations to understand, first of all, why the bridge is named what it's named, and then get into more of what he meant to the city, to the state, and to the nation.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Mitch Legan.